Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to be taking you on a virtual tour of our sawmill and millwork operation today. My name is Paul. I'm one of the lucky ones who gets to work at Xena Forest, and here are just a few notes before we dive in. There's a chat over on the right side of your screen. Feel free to say hello there and ask any questions you can think of. That's also a great place to go if you have any technical problems. And if you can hear me right now, I'd love to hear you say hello back, just so I know everything is working well. I feel a little more confident. Today's tour is being recorded, and I'll send you a link to that later on by email. Our topic today is a virtual tour of the Xena Forest Sawmill. Some of you joined us last month for a tour of the forest where we talked about how we grow trees and how we take care of our forest. And if you missed it, I'll include a link to that video in an email after the webinar. Today we're talking, with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Ben to talk about how we take our trees and turn them into sustainable hardwood flooring and all the little things we pay attention to all along the way. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Ben Doimling, and I'm the, manager and co-owner of this operation with my family. And yeah, we're gonna do our best to virtually bring you into the sawmill and millwork operation. And this really follows on last month where we talked about the forest and how we grow trees and take care of the trees. And the sawmill operation really is our effort at creating a vertically integrated process where we can work with the wood from A to Z, from seedling all the way to floorboard. This vertical integration really allows us to pay attention to detail at every step and make as high a quality and have as good a yield as possible from this really precious finite resource of hardwood logs that we work with. And we're going to go through sort of chronologically, starting from a log, the sawmill, through our drying process, and then our millwork process, sort of as wood flows through. And you can kind of imagine that, a particular log is flowing through all of these steps. It takes, as we'll go through, it takes some time to get through all of the steps, but that's the process. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So here's our log truck. We bring logs out of the forest, out of our forest with this truck, and bring them back to our log yard. We also use this for working up logs that we buy from outside sources. We buy quite a bit of our wood from other forests in the surrounding area to supplement our own logs. And this log truck is our Swiss Army knife that allows us to move anything most anywhere. And in the summertime and late summer and early fall, we put a lot of hours on this truck as we bring logs into the mill. There's our log deck. Once we basically load up our deck at the sawmill with logs that are prepped and ready to go, they've been scaled and put in inventory. Each log has a little tag on it that identifies it as it goes through the process. And we wax the ends to help preserve them as they sit on the log deck, keep them from drying out too quickly. And there's a seasonality to this work where about this time of year, our log deck is very full, like it looks right now. This is from a couple years ago, but our log deck is similar right now. And we saw through the winter, and logging season is really in the dry months in the summer when we will stock up the deck at that point. Here's our sawmill. This is the heart and lifeblood of the operation. And we're going to jump into a little video here where you can see this sawmill in action. One of the neat things about this operation is we're small. We're able to really pay attention to detail as the wood goes through this process. Hi there. Looks like I was muted for a little bit. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear me over the video here. And this is a bigger than the average log, but one that's fun to watch and see how we process it. We'll start by squaring up the log, taking the four sides off. That allows us to see what's inside. Opening a log, sawing a log, it's like opening a Christmas present, and we get to do that all day long, every day. To be honest, it's a lot of fun, and you have some ideas of what might be inside, but you never really know until you start cutting it open. And the first indications is when we take the four faces off and we get to see what's underneath the bark, and that starts to give us an indication of what might be inside, what kind of end uses it might go to, whether it's furniture grade lumber or tabletops or flooring or paneling, and that gets us started in thinking what we might do with it. Once we square the log up, we'll split it in half. This allows us to partly to see what's in the middle, and also allows us to really maximize the grain orientation. There are three different. There's quarter sawn, rift sawn, and flat sawn. Those are three different ways the grain can be oriented in a board. And quarter sawn and rift sawn are often the most popular, the most valuable for many applications. And so we try at all times to really get the best cut. It's similar to cutting up a butcher cutting a cow, a side of beef, to really get the best cuts you can out of the piece. And in our case, we have a number of different recipes depending on the type and size of log. But in this case, we cut it in half, and that allows us to get a lot of quarter and rifts on. We'll go into greater depth in a future webinar about what the difference is between quarter, rift, and flat, and all of the ramifications of that. But this is sort of a teaser of what will come in a future webinar. We're sweeping each board, sweeping the sawdust off, and we have a couple different stacks we're going to put it in, depending on the size and whether it needs more remanufacturing or subsequent manufacturing before it can go to the air drying sheds. And there's no computers, there's not really any lasers. It just all the skill really is the sawmill operator is making 1,000 little decisions on the fly to try to get the best he can out of each piece of wood. And this is the most highly skilled job we have at the sawmill is operating this machine. And now it's time to do the second half. And so that was a little snapshot of what the sawmill operation looks like. And it's a very carefully choreographed dance where the 2 or 3 guys are working around each other to pull the best boards we can out of each tree. We're basically taking circles and turning them into lots and lots of little rectangles. And as we move on from this, we build these units that, these are called stickered units. We put these little sticks between each layer, which allow the wood to dry, allows air to flow across every board. We make them very nice and uniform. Then they go into our air drying sheds where they get put away. We let Mother Nature take the drying process from here for a long time. Wood will stay here for anywhere from 6 months to up to 3 years. It's a very long time, and we want to dry the wood as slowly as possible, especially in the early parts of the drying process, because these boards are starting out with 60 or 70% water content, and we're trying to get them down to about 8% at the very end of the drying process. And especially with our Oregon white oak, it doesn't let go of that water very easily. And if you pull the water out too quickly, if it dries too fast, you get a wide range of different drying defects and problems. And so we have these sheds where we keep the wood cool, and in the initial phases, we keep the drying process very slow and just let the wind slowly blow across it, and evaporative cooling slowly takes the moisture off the woods. Then we'll move over to our dry kilns. These are 2 kilns that we've built ourselves and are running 24/7, 365 days out of the year. We have a wood furnace in the center, where we burn our wood scraps, and we use that to heat the kilns. And the wood, after it has been stored long enough in the air drying sheds and it's down to around 20% moisture content, we'll then bring it over to the kilns, load it in the kiln, warm it up, and finish the drying process. The extra added heat from the furnace allows us to pull that last bit of moisture out of the woods and get it stabilized, get it equalized, and also kill any bugs that might have decided to bore into the woods. And then it takes around 3 to 4 weeks, depending 2 to 6 weeks, I guess, depending on the thickness of the wood and the species and the time of year for the wood to finish drying in the kilns here. And after it comes out of the kilns, then we would move on to our millwork operation, where we kind of do this second half of the project. This is our planer and the heart of our planing line. And this, once the boards are dry, they're stable, but they're rough sawn. Don't have a smooth surface. They may have twisted or warped a little bit in the process of drying. And now we need to flatten them out and smooth them and plane them to an accurate and consistent size. So that's where this process comes in. A little bit about these machines. All of the machines you'll see here are older machines that I've rehabbed over the years, brought back to life, and many of them are quite old. The 2 planers are both made, and one's made in the 40s and one's made in the 60s, both been completely rebuilt here in-house, and now do phenomenal service on a regular basis. And here you can see our planing line. We start with our facer, which is going to flatten the board. This is a very specialized machine which I searched far and wide for. It will flatten the boards, it acts like a joiner basically, where it gives us a reference surface. And from there it feeds on, that'll plane the bottom of the board, and it'll then feed on through the planer, where we check it, make sure everything is good, and then it goes to the planer, where it is then planes to a specific thickness and surfaces the top of the board. And at this point, we have wood that is surfaced 2 sides. We're able to then see the grade of the woods and start to make some decisions on where this wood might go. And the planer is one of my very favorite tools. And it was made in 1949. It just turned 70 years old last year. Started its life at the Bremerton Naval Shipyard in Washington, restoring Navy ships. In 1960, the Bremerton Naval Yard discontinued their wood shop because there were no more wooden Navy ships to work on, and it went down to Oregon State University when Oregon State built their Oak Creek building and built their new wood science laboratory. And this then did service for another 50-some years at Oregon State, being used and abused by professors and students and their science projects, but ultimately it saw very little use there. And a while ago, they swapped out all of the machines in the wood science lab, and I was able to rescue this machine and put it to use at our place. And it still holds tolerances that you could not find in a new planer today. It is an incredibly accurate and high-performing machine, and it's one of the favorite machines of our whole operation.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Jumping in, I missed 2 questions during the drying phase, so sorry to everyone about that. So Anne was asking, how do you determine the water content of the pieces of wood through the process?
Yes, so we have a couple different moisture meters. These are little electronic gizmo devices that measure the amount of moisture in the woods. And specifically when the wood is in the kilns, we have a set of pins that we drill and hammer into a handful of sample boards in every kiln loads that allows us to remotely read the real-time moisture contents of the boards in the units of lumber as they're drying. And that I use as a guide to know how to adjust the kiln controls to dry it at just the right rate.
Yes. And then how are the kilns powered? Sean wants to know if we use any natural gas.
We don't. The heat is exclusively wood heat. We use wood to heat hot water, and we use some electricity for the fans and the controls. But the bulk of the energy is woods generated right here from our wood scraps.
One of the things that I think is really neat about our operation is the waste products don't go to the landfill. So some of it turns into firewood for firing the kilns. Some of it is sawdust goes to mushroom growers, and our garbage can is probably smaller than the one you have at your house for a big manufacturing facility. I think that's pretty cool. Who maintains all these machines?
It's a collaborative effort. I'm probably the primary millwright, but we have a phenomenal team of folks who work here, and everybody is a millwright. When a machine goes down, everybody jumps in and helps, and it's a collaborative effort. We're all part-time mechanics, but I'm the primary one, and I thoroughly enjoy working on these machines.
What kind of temperatures do we get the kilns up to?
We finish the drying process around 155 degrees. And so these are low temperature kilns. We don't get them hot like the steam kilns that dried softwoods here in the valley. But that lower temperature is enough to kill the bugs and finish the drying process, but it isn't too hot to really damage the wood or dry it too quickly.
You mentioned when we're drying, there's these sticks between the boards, these stickers here. Brian wants to know if they cause any discoloration while they're drying.
They shouldn't. And we pay close attention to have good quality stickers. They're Douglas fir stickers. They're nice and dry when they go in the unit. And we do get some occasional drying issues with some of our processes, but those are few and far between and are not usually the fault of the sticker. They're the fault of some improper temperature and moisture conditions when the unit was made or when it was early in the air drying process.
Tom's got two good questions here. One, Tom's asking about moisture getting back into the lumber afterwards, which I think we'll cover in a little while. But what are the dimensions of the lumber going through the planer?
Depends on what we sawed it at. We decide those dimensions at the sawmill, and then we hit those targets when we run it through the planer. We make 4/4, 6/4, and 8/4 primarily. So that's 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch thick lumber. And there are particular targets that we shoot for. 4/4 is going to be hit and miss plane through our planer at 15/16 of an inch, whereas 6/4 is going to be hit and miss plane and planed at 1 7/16. So we work to fairly exacting tolerances on these machines, but these are for the most part hit and miss plane, which allows any subsequent woodworking processes to take that lumber and plane it down a little bit more to final size.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Should we move on to ripping?
Sounds good. So our ripping process here is our straight line rip saw. So after the wood has been planed on two sides, we want to clean up the edges. It still has rough, irregular edges. And we use a straight line rip saw with a single blades, which again, all of these processes are really tuned to, they're probably slower than some of the bigger, more industrial processes, but they allow us to have real attention to detail and make a lot more decisions on every board as it goes through the process. And this way we can really squeak out the very best and quality and most yield from this precious resource. So this saw here is sort of an integral part of that operation and that process of really getting the best yield we can. So we will take one edge off, and then the wood goes through a second time to take a second edge off, depending on the final use of the wood, whether it's going to flooring or select lumber for. So here you can see our rip saw. There's it's a 3-person operation. There's a person feeding. There's a person measuring the boards as they come out and sorting them by width and pulling the firewood off. And there's a third person at the end who's stacking it in one of probably 8 or 9 different piles. So here's a flooring blank. This is going to be turning into 2 1/4 inch flooring, ready for the molder. And that's so here's where we decide the grade, we figure out what we're going to do with it, and we sort it into a number of different categories. And a lot of our wood is going to go to hardwood flooring, which that's one. The next step is a step we outsource. We work with a shop up in Hubbard called Trillium Pacific Millwork. They're a phenomenal partner in our operation, and we will send the wood to them. They will run it through their molder, and in the case of our engineered flooring line, we'll run it through their glue press, press it onto our plywood substrates, and then that's our outsource step. Those are both steps that we're in the process of bringing in-house. We've slowly, one step at a time, been bringing these processes in-house to be able to do them ourselves, all in the effort of having more control over the quality and the yields and how we work through these boards. Once the wood comes back from Trillium, we then have to start chopping it. And we will chop the defect out, square up the ends, and run it through our end matcher. And this is one more very important step where we are making another set of grade decisions. We are sorting our flooring into our different grades. Here's our end matcher where we put the tongue and groove on the ends of the boards. That's the final milling process that happens to make a piece of flooring that's ready to install. And by being able to make all these great decisions in-house with our own crew, we know exactly what goes out the door. And a particular grades is always going to be the same and have the same characteristics year in, year out, because we are able to keep control of that. This end matcher machine that we're going to be watching is another fun one. It's the only machine we have that has a computer control in it, and it was the only machine that we were not able to work on ourselves. So we brought it over to a local shop that ended up completely rebuilding it after I got it, and put a new brain, a new controller in there, and it's now really optimized to work perfectly for our specific application of end matching our Hubbard flooring. And
Ben, can you say what you mean by end matching?
Yeah, so end matching is when we put a tongue and groove on the ends of the board, of the floorboard. Floors always have a tongue and groove on the side, but you put a tongue and groove on the end as well. It helps the boards fit together. It helps keeps the floor flat, and it makes the installer's job much easier, and is just a nice last little add-on that we can do to the flooring to make it as good as possible. This is another favorite saw. That was an upcut saw where the saw blade jumps up through the table. It's a very safe and very fast saw that we use. And our end matcher, here you can see, is cutting the tongue and groove on the ends. And then our bundling process where we bundle. And again, we focus on building bundles that are uniform, and make the flooring installer's job easy to have a good range of pieces in each bundle. We have lots of long lengths, and yeah, this is the last step in the process where we build these flooring bundles, and then the flooring gets stacked in our warehouse, ready to ship out to the job site. And that was basically the tour. Here you can see the little end matches, the tongue and groove on the ends of the boards. And yeah, that shows how a board goes through the process. The last step right here is where we put it in our warehouse. This is a temperature and humidity controlled warehouse where we're able to keep the wood dry. Because yes, once the wood comes out of the kiln, it could start reabsorbing moisture, and especially on a day like today, it will. It's cold and rainy outside. The wood will start reabsorbing fairly quickly. So we keep it here in this dry room, we call it. We have a dehumidifier running in here. We have a heater in here, and it is kept at basically living room conditions, occupancy conditions, so that when the wood leaves our place, it is dry, it is stable, it is ready to be turned into furniture or laid down on a floor. And with that, I think that's a wrap on this show. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope you tune in next time.
Yeah, before we jump to that, Ben, there's a couple
Yeah,
more questions,
absolutely.
and anyone who has questions, now's a great time to pop them in the chat there. I have a question for you first, Ben. What is your favorite part of this process?
I really like pushing boards through a planer. There's something incredibly satisfying about putting a rough sawn board in one end and having a nice smooth board come out the other ends. It's got a nice sound to it. It has they're really neat machines. That's my favorite part.
I like that part too, because we've put at that point about a year of work into these boards, and it's the first step where we really see what's in there. And it kind of all comes together at that point. So Kelly's got a couple questions here. What's the dust collection situation, and does all of it go to mushroom growers, or what's the situation with the sawdust?
Yeah, we have a dust collector system that's a vacuum system that collects dust from our mill workshop. As you saw early in the sawmill video, we do not have our dust collection system is a broom and a shovel. One more piece, work in process. We have the machinery, we have the dust collector, we haven't set it up yet. It's another project for the millwright. And yes, practically 100% of our sawdust goes to our mushroom grower customer. There's a small bit of sawdust that's too dirty with bark or chunks of wood or dirt or rocks that we dump in the woods behind the mill, but 98% of our sawdust goes to the mushroom grower.
Jeff wants to know, do we make solid wood flooring?
We do. It's a small part of what we make these days, but yes, we definitely make both 3/4 inch solids as well as 3/4 inch engineered flooring.
And you mentioned already, we'll talk a little bit about that in our next webinar. I'll throw the details up on the screen here, just so people can see all the possible things we can do with this wood at the end of the process. Speaking of flooring, are we using a filler for the knots or the cracks, anything like that?
We don't. We leave that up to the flooring installer to fill. We basically create a canvas and let the installer fill that canvas. I guess you could say there's many different ways of finishing a floor, and there's many different colors of filler that people might want to use. And so we don't fill the knots. We let the installer do that and at the direction of the designer or the homeowner.
William is asking about something a little different, which is our custom side. He says, if I bring oak from my forest for milling, do I get my finished wood back, or do I get somebody else's wood?
Either, I guess, but traditionally we would, if we're doing a custom project like that, we would be keeping your wood separate through the process. It would be sawed separately, kept in a separate unit, put through the kiln separately, and kept segregated throughout the process, where you would then be able to get your specific boards back from the trees that you brought. And that's a really fun opportunity where the floor that you have came from trees from your place, and to be able to trace that through is really neat. So yeah, we keep them separate.
How many employees?
We have 6 employees, and we are a slowly growing operation, and we will be adding a couple more next year. So, but we're a wonderfully tight-knit and phenomenal team.
What about stumps or rounds or anything like that? Is everything rectangles, or is there anything circular?
We occasionally will do a custom one-off project. Just recently, we provided a handful of custom-sized log rounds for a architectural project, and we have provided, you see this little picture here, there's oddball opportunities for things that are not square, and so those are always options. Because we are connected to a forest, there's a lot of options. So yeah, the sky's the limit when you work at a place like this.
Question from Jeff. How many square feet of flooring are on the shelf generally? Like if somebody shows up and they want to buy flooring?
We have a number. We have almost a dozen different sorts, different options, and we try to keep between 1,000 and 2,000 feet of most all of those on the shelf. So at any one, for most floors, if it's 1,000 feet or less, we probably have it on the shelf. And we also keep blanks, which are ready to turn into flooring. So that's a 4-week turnaround time. So we can make just about anything in 4 weeks. And so, but yeah, there's, I don't know, Paul, you would know more than I do how many square feet of flooring we have on the shelf, but it's a lot.
We got a lot. Yep. And it's coming in, it's going out. It's yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. For sure. I think we just plowed through all the questions. Ben, do you want to say anything about next month's webinar?
Absolutely. So we really focused on the process here and how we do what we do. And we're excited to sort of share what the final products are. And there are a lot of different possibilities. Flooring and furniture are 2 of the more common ones, but even within those 2 categories, there's a number of different options. And so we're excited to sort of share some of the more interesting projects. You'll hear the backstory of this picture here and this particular floor, and a number of other interesting projects, and go into some detail on some of the things we make and some of the potentials there are out there for things that you might not normally think about, and that we can make out of these local hardwoods. So it'll be a fun, visually driven presentation next month.
Very cool. So just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining our webinar. I'll send you an email in a little while later today with a recording of the webinar, information on the next webinar, and some other goodies for you. If you'd like to keep up to date on developments at the mill, I'd encourage you to sign up for our email newsletter. You can find that on our website. I'll put a link to it in the email. We send out infrequent emails about events at Xena, as well as musing on trees and forestry and sustainability. And if you'd like to support operations like ours, the best thing you can do is to buy local wood products, whether that's hardwood flooring from Xena or other wood products from other local producers. You can vote with your dollars by choosing wood from locally sustainably grown trees and locally manufactured items too. And we're happy to be a resource for finding whatever you're looking for, so never hesitate to get in touch. You can see our website here as well as our social media, and those are all great places to get in touch. And this video will be on our YouTube page later as well, if you'd like to see some of the stuff all over again. And yeah, we hope you can join us for our webinar next month, which will dive into all the possibilities like Ben said. Thanks so much for being here, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.